Tom Rogan, foreign policy columnist for the National Review and domestic policy columnist for Opportunity Lives, joins us as we continue the coverage here. What a thought to end on from Rick's report. But this is something that you've been writing about, Tom, about the device itself that was used in this attack and what it tells us. What does it tell us?
Well, the first focal issue is that because of the explosive power, because of the ability of the bomb maker to make it in a way that went undetected, it suggests both operational security, which is skill, training, involvement, but it also suggests someone who really knows what they're doing, who at this point probably has not yet been captured. And so there is that great concern that, as Rick Leventhal says, what happens next? What happens in the coming days? And that's why I think you see this sense of urgency on the part of the British government to arrest whoever is responsible. Tell
us a little bit about Manchester, why in particular that city matters as a place of focus, and where this attack actually took place, the choice there, and also the news of another person under arrest now.
Well, Manchester, is the third most populous city in England. It's a big cultural centre for the British, society. But I think the interesting point here, in terms of all these raids that are going around Manchester, suggests that they have some intelligence indicating connection points to other individuals in Manchester per se, rather than people who've perhaps spread across the country. So in some sense that might be positive, because it allows you to dedicate your resources to a localized area. But again, at this point, the number of arrests that we're seeing don't take into that the cell is being wrapped up. The tradition of British counterterrorism in the aftermath of an attack is to arrest essentially anyone who was in contact, regular contact with the individual of concern, and so I suspect some of those people will probably be released in the coming days. I think.
Oh, interesting.
And you see the energy is still very much on the part of the security services, the police. Look, for example, you saw the critical alert level raised yesterday. The arrests made today and yesterday. Frankly, if they thought that was the entirety of the cell, they would not have raised that level to critical. They don't want to do that. They don't want to put soldiers on the streets.
So seeing some progress, but then still questions, as you're mentioning. So I mean, here we are. We're not that far into this story, quite frankly. One of the other developments, again, over the last half an hour, is that the brother of the suicide bomber was arrested apparently in Libya. We're getting that report from the Associated Press. Libya, to many, is in the rearview mirror, something we've talked about many years ago, but certainly don't talk about equally to that of Syria and Iraq. Why does Libya matter, and why does that connection perhaps to the bomber, why could that be significant?
It matters in the sense that while behind the scenes there have been French and other special operations forces on the ground fighting ISIS there, Libya has been neglected, as you say, on some of the radar of at least the political debate about what to do about ISIS. We focus perhaps too much on Syria, and so when you consider the amount of basic space in Libya, the connectivity with other existing terrorist groups that have long-standing links there, it's a wake-up call. It's also very important in the sense that a lot of British tourists travel to Tunisia, and Tunisia borders Libya. So potentially, and this is what's being looked at now, this individual, the bomber, and perhaps some of his counterparts, traveled to Libya, met with ISIS, were trained up, and then went back across the border and flew home from Tunisia, thus reducing the concern perhaps that they would be pinged on the radar of the counterterrorism officers at the major airports in the UK on arrival.
That's so important for us to realize that. I want to show the map just again for our viewers, because when you see it, you can see how close it is to Europe. And also, I just want to point this out. We know that the president is going to be in Italy. I mean, he's in Italy now, but he's going to be, I'm sorry, he went to the Vatican. He's now in Belgium. He's going to be going back to Italy, to Sicily specifically. And you can see how close that is to Tripoli, where apparently this arrest has been made, but also the importance of Tunisia and the ease of travel between all these countries. There's some questions now, Tom, of course, how can we not ask them about how safe we are here? You see this type of technology with the bomb. You hear all the reports about a travel ban perhaps being extended into Europe regarding laptops. What are we to think?
Well, again, the key will be what develops in the coming days. If there's another attack, whatever we think, everything will be on the table politically in terms of those steps. But if the cell is wrapped up, if it turns to be a support cell rather than a sort of operational cell, and I have to say, I suspect it's probably more of an operational cell, which is to say other support people, bomb maker, facilitators, hiding places, etc. An operational cell would be other individuals like the bomber who perhaps had been staging for attacks. So that is why the urgency is there. That's when you read between the lines of what the British are doing, that all speaks to urgency. But again, the difficulty that we have in the global environment is that there are a lot of places where if someone is aware of how to avoid detection, they can pull this off, and it's you're never going to be able to stop every attack. That's the simple fact. So the British intelligence services are some of the very best in the world, certainly in the domestic front, and the US-UK special relationship is proving its worth at the moment, because I can guarantee you there will be a lot of interchange of intelligence.
Let me just ask you something really quick, and then I have to run. I'm seeing some other additional reports that we're working to confirm about additional arrests, so I don't want to go with them yet. But when, to your knowledge, when the terror level is raised, does that give law enforcement in England more of an ability to arrest people with a lesser standard, if you will, than they might need?
No, but in the UK, the Home Secretary, who's a politician, can authorise warrants, which would have to be authorised by a court in the United States. So there's investigative power. What the critical alert level does is it means that those armed soldiers on the streets can be moved into static positions, and the armed police officers who are specifically trained to counteract a rolling Mumbai, a Paris-style attack can actually be positioned and put more into cars and in responsive capability. So it just frees up resources. But in judicial sense, no, nothing has changed. It's not like a state of emergency as in France.
Interesting. That's good perspective for us. And when you mention Mumbai, when you mention Paris, I can't help but think of a conversation we had on this show with the FBI here at home. It was several years ago now, but what they were really concerned about is not just one attack, but what happens when you have coordinated attacks? What happens if you have different people in different parts of a major city and it all happening at the same time? So we know that's something our law enforcement is watching out for. Tom, it's great to have you on the program. We appreciate it. Look forward to having you back. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenna.